What's going on, guys? It's Tony with Urban Girl Scout Media, living the dream as always, and coming to you today to go off the rails on the Bad Boy Pistons. So, we are living in this wonderful pandemic that has provided us little to no sports, which means that when the Chicago Bulls Last Dance documentary airs, we have just gotten past episode 4. Everyone and their brother is watching it and has reactions. And there's been some good takes. There's been some really interesting stuff that's come out of it. I have to talk about one thing, though. One thing that always bothers me from the 1990s Bulls and their dynasties and just all of that. And that is the Bad Boy Pistons. So, no Chicago Bulls documentary is ever complete without talking about that team. For those of you who don't know, and for those of you who haven't seen The Last Dance or haven't seen the 30 for 30 on the Bad Boys or anything about them, here's what you need to know. The NBA in the 80s and through the mid-90s was not the NBA that you know today. You could essentially mug a player if they were driving to the lane, and you may get called for a personal foul. You might. There's a book called The Jordan Rules because of how Michael Jordan changed the game and forced teams to play around him and things like that. The Bad Boy Pistons were really the example and the poster child of this physical era of basketball. You could say that the New York Knicks were, but the Pistons brought home 2 championships, right? They won 2 NBA titles. So they're the poster child, in my opinion, for physical, rough and tumble basketball. They had one of the 50 greatest players of all time in Isaiah Thomas. Joe Dumars, who I think he's in that next 100 players of all-timers. I think he's up there, or he's at least in the conversation. Dennis Rodman, Bill Laimbeer. They had some good players. But they also had Chuck Daly, who was the late Chuck Daly, who is one of the absolute, just most amazing coaches when you consider that he didn't really have basketball talent. He had a lot of physical players that could do basketball things, but their first skill was not basketball. It was being physical on the basketball court. Now, we always kind of focus on this one moment. It always leads up to this one moment, and that is, we'll call it the handshake. The Bulls for years struggled to get by the Pistons. They just couldn't do it. Finally, they did it. They climbed the mountain and they got past Detroit. And there is video proof. Everyone talks about how, you got to see it on video. There is video proof the Bulls shook hands when they lost. There is also video proof that the Pistons left the floor early when they were going to be eliminated. They did not congratulate. They did not do anything. They just got up and left. And throughout the years, there's been just tons of stories about that is the reason that Isaiah Thomas was left off the Dream Team. And the Pistons, the way that they interpret that moment is very different. Even like the single players like Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman, Dumars, Isaiah Thomas, they all have evolved, and I don't say evolved in terms of a good way, I just mean that their opinions have changed and evolved over the years. And they definitely have a revisionist history where they think that's not how it was done back then, or, we just wanted to get off the court and all that. The fact of the matter is, and this is what I really wanted to focus on, is that the Bad Boy Pistons were not an artful team in any way, shape, or form. They were a bunch of bruisers. And that's fine. It got them some championships. It got them results. I'm not knocking them at all. I mean, hell, Isaiah Thomas is one of the 50 greatest players of all time, and I'm not arguing that either. But kind of much like the 2008 Boston Celtics, they have this revisionist history of things that really just benefit them. They don't actually remember the way it went down, and even though there's video proof of both, the Pistons were we're going to beat you up. We're going to be the bad guys. That's why we're called the Bad Boys. And they loved that persona until it worked against them. That's the problem, is that they wanted to be the bad guys. They wanted to be the bruisers. They wanted to be the ones to beat you up. But when it finally didn't go their way, when people started getting tired of it, when people don't remember them with all this love and compassion, except for the city of Detroit and Jalen Rose, who, I mean, that, I don't think you can ever convince him otherwise that that's one of the greatest teams ever. But again, he's from Detroit. People outside that city are really the only ones that care about that team and remember them fondly. I remember them as a team that beat up other teams. I remember the fist fight with Larry Bird. I think it was like Bill Laimbeer and Larry Bird. I still remember that. Still remember that to this day. All the times that Jordan drove to the lane and just got decimated. I mean, how do you, I don't know how you can look back on it and say anything other than they were a product of their time. They were a very successful product of their time. And no, they're not going to be remembered the way they wanted. But part of that's because they played the way they wanted, not the way that people wanted. So there's the way that you want to do things, and then there's a way that people who will remember you want you to do things. They did it their own way. And I think that's pretty cool that they're able to do it their own way, bring home championships, be a successful team. They're known as the Bad Boy Pistons. They're going to go down in history. But that doesn't change the fact that Isaiah, Bill, they just have this really skewed memory. I mean, I guess that's the only way I can put it. They have this really skewed memory of what happened, and it's a lot different than what they explain. So the Bad Boy Pistons were a great team for that era. I don't think in today's game, with the way fouls are called and the way scoring is, I don't think that team would make the playoffs. I really don't. They can't beat people up, and they can't out-physical you, and they were not a high-scoring team in the first place. So that team was great for that time, but that team also needs to understand that they were the villains of the league. You cannot go back now and say, oh, well, we don't want to be the villains. You don't get to choose that now. You don't get to choose that. And it doesn't matter what sport you're playing. It doesn't matter what competition you're doing. It doesn't matter if you love or hate the guy. There are 99% of the time you should be able to stand up, shake the person's hand, and say, good game, good match, congratulations. If you can't do that, you shouldn't be competing. And that's something that I've taught my 12-year-old nephew, 6-year-old niece. I mean, this is stuff we tell kids. So for Isaiah Thomas, say there's a lot going on and pressure and this and that. Yeah, but you're a mature-ass man, and you guys acted like a bunch of children. And it's that simple. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully you've been watching some of the documentary. I have not. I've actually had to catch a lot of it through links and YouTube and stuff like that. So I'm caught up, but tell me what you guys think. Tell me what you guys think about the Bad Boy Pistons. What do you remember about them? What do you remember about that team and about that era of basketball? That's always a fun time to talk about just because of how different it was compared to what we have now. My name is Tony K. This is Urban Girl Scout Media, and we are living the dream as always.